All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Want to welcome on a special guest, I think first time on the podcast. We got James Boyd from The Athletic. James, welcome onto the show, man. How are you doing? You surviving the heat? How you been?
I'm good. Obviously, yeah, we were both out there sweating it up a couple of days ago. So excited to be getting down to the end of training camp. But at the same time, still excited for what's to come after training camp because obviously then it gets real.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were just talking a little bit off air. There's obviously so many different competitions around this roster, starting with the quarterback position, but then there's a ton of different ones. And so I'm curious for you, James, with some of these positions, some starting positions that, some guys are battling through, and also some of those back into the roster type position battles. Maybe we can start with some of the starters. Who have been some of the standouts for you? Some of the guys that we said, hey, one of these guys needs to figure it out and needs to become, maybe that full-time number one guy. Who have been some of your big standouts that you've noticed consistently through training camp for you?
Great question, Cody. I'll go with one on each side of the ball, offense and defense. Offense, I'll go AD Mitchell. I thought he had a rough start to training camp, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, if you don't pick this up, man, they're going to call you a bust before your second season even starts. And right. So he's picked it up as of late. I think that honestly, over the last week and a half, 2 weeks, he's probably been the best receiver the Colts have had in training camp. Now, obviously, he has to show that he can do it on Sundays, do it on game days. And I think the physicality part is all of our questions kind of related to him is like, okay, we know you can separate. We know you can make the acrobatic catches. We know you have all this talent. Because I think if you look at the entire wide receiver room on this team, all of us would probably say AD Mitchell has the most talent in that room of any wide receiver. Just physical, God-given ability. He can do everything. He's 6'2", runs a 4.3, jump out the gym, you name it, separate with the best of them. So he's looked the part for sure. It looks more comfortable and smooth. I actually just put a piece out on The Athletic about an hour ago where I watched him yesterday in practice, Cody, all practice. Just one player, lock in on him. So I was able to kind of see some stuff maybe other people wouldn't notice or wouldn't see. So I encourage you all to check that out. It was fun to kind of see how he goes about practice. And one thing I noticed, Cody, is that he asks a ton of questions to a ton of different people. So in between that hour and 10-minute practice yesterday, hour and whatever, however long it was, hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes, he was talking to, both quarterbacks. He was talking to the quarterbacks coach, Cam Turner. He's talking to the wide receivers coach, obviously Reggie Wayne, talking to the offensive coordinator, Jim Bob Cooter, talking to the head coach, Shane Steichen. So he's always talking to somebody, asking questions. And I think that's why he's had some success, and it's come early on throughout training camp. And then to pivot to defense, Latu. I mean, what more can I say? Over the last couple of days, it seems like neither quarterback can get, through a series without him disrupting something or getting a quote-unquote sack in training camp because obviously you can't tackle. So I look at those two as being huge pieces to helping this team potentially end a playoff drought. And for Latu in particular, I think his role is even more important because, on the wide receiver side, they have proven guys. But on that defensive end, room, they don't really have like that star player. And quite frankly, when you're drafted 15th overall, like Latu was last year, you're supposed to be a star at some point and, sooner rather than later. So I'm expected to see him make a jump, especially with Dayo Dangbo going to Chicago. He played the most snaps of any defensive lineman last year on the team. So without him in the mix, that gives you, that runway to hopefully take off in your second year.
Yeah, for sure. And, you got to talk about the quarterback position. I mean, that's been the thing that everybody's been talking about and focusing on. What have you noticed here the first couple of weeks of camp? Obviously, we know Richardson started, against Baltimore, got hurt, and then Daniel Jones will be starting against Green Bay here. So what have you noticed from both these quarterbacks? And have you noticed any sort of separation between them, or do you think it's still fairly locked in even right now?
I think it's fairly even. I would probably give a slight lean as of late to Daniel Jones, mainly because of the availability. Anthony got hurt in the preseason, and his first practice back after that dislocated pinky against the Ravens was pretty poor. He did not perform very well. So I think from an availability standpoint, perhaps like a safe and consistency standpoint, maybe you give a slight lean to Daniel Jones. But me personally, I think I've remained in the Anthony Richardson camp just because it hasn't been like a definitive landslide in favor of any quarterback. And I think if it's close, you roll with the guy who has more upside and who is supposed to be you're a franchise quarterback and who you drafted to be your franchise quarterback. Now, I know he isn't that yet. He might not ever be that, but I would like to find out if I'm the Colts' front office. And so it is a bit of a conundrum because with Anthony, you want him to get the reps, but the number one reason he missed last week's reps against the Ravens was because he got hurt. And that's another thing that he has an inability to shake so far. It's hard to say he isn't injury prone when every part of his career so far has been with injuries. Even this offseason, you would think, okay, it's the offseason, no one's hitting you. You're going to get all these reps in. You're going to be neck and neck with this quarterback competition. But to me, the reason why he might be slightly losing it at the moment is because you haven't been available. The spring you got shut down. You had the pinky issue. So we'll see how it goes. Like I said, if it's close, me personally, I'm playing the dude that gives me more upside than 28-year-old Daniel Jones, who, by the way, started 69 games in New York. Like, this isn't a spring, chicken quarterback they brought in. And he's still pretty young, but at the same time, he's not like fresh off of his rookie deal. I mean, the guy got paid, took a team to the playoffs, but since then, he struggled. And I think that sample size that he had in New York, despite all of the, coaching issues, personnel issues, I think he was one of those issues too. I can't dismiss everything and put it on everybody else. So it's close. But again, I will give the slight edge right now to Daniel Jones. And then on top of that, I think the way that the way that Anthony can win the job just outright, be available, which I don't know how much you can control that when obviously you don't intend to get hurt. And on top of that, you give them more explosive plays than Daniel Jones already, but you got to meet him where he is when it comes to the layups. And so he's done that too, I think, at a decent rate throughout training camp, but it's got to continue for him to, I think, seize that job.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, what have you been seeing from the rookies, James? Because obviously we know, unfortunately, Justin Wally out for the year, but you still have Tyler Warren. Yeah. You still have Tyler Warren, obviously. You have, JT Tuimoloau and a couple other guys in there as well. So curious what you have seen as far as the rookies go and the impact they've had so far.
Well, this is where, bring the juice. I feel like when it comes to juice, Tyler Warren brings it. I mean, that dude is as good as advertised. And I try not to get too hyperbolic with players, especially when they're rookies. But I think it's very, very hard for me to see Tyler Warren not working out. Because to me, his floor is probably an above average starter in the NFL. His ceiling is probably an all-pro. But I just don't see this world where it's like we look back in 2 or 3 years and we're like, man, they drafted Tyler Warren. What were they thinking? Because he's looked the part so much so far. I actually think that he'll be better in regular football settings, kind of like Anthony Richardson, because of the physicality, the ability to run after the catch. There are certain times throughout training camp, even yesterday, he caught a long pass in the last 2-minute drill in 11-on-11 from Anthony Richardson, and Tyler Warren catches it and gets down to maybe the 2, and he's running full speed. And they blow him dead because 2 guys tapped him on his shoulder, and it's like 2-hand touch, like you're in your backyard with your friends or something. But I'm like, in a real game, that locomotive is not getting stopped after, catching the ball and running 20 yards clean by himself. Like, they're not stopping him at the 1-yard line, 2-yard line with that amount of momentum and speed moving. I'm like, nah, that's not going to happen. That's going to be a touchdown. So those moments, I'm thinking to myself, wow, this could be something really special. And so I also think that he'll help the quarterback play. And you think about some of the struggles, Cody, that they've had in the passing game. It's not been all on the quarterbacks. And one of the knocks on this Colts regime in this front office is that, okay, you drafted Anthony Richardson, but you didn't give him any help over the middle. They had, I believe, the second fewest tight end receiving yards last year, and the only other team that had fewer were the Rams. And obviously no one's questioning the Rams passing game. They had Matthew Stafford, and they looked great last year, even against the defending Super Bowl champion, the Eagles. And so I think Tyler Warren will help a lot in that department. So he looks solid. I am a big believer in his ability. I do like, again, what DJ Giddens has given them out of the backfield. Smooth pass catcher, not a smooth talker. I will say he is very quiet. It gives me a little bit of that little quiet assassin vibe, which is fine because his play, I think, will help him. One, give you a different look, perhaps on third downs. He's trying to improve as a pass blocker, but if he can do that, he's already proven himself as a pass catcher out of the backfield. And then 2, can you help keep Jonathan Taylor fresh? because
Right.
we know JT is a big time player. But if you keep those hits off of him, that way when you get down to November, December, and you got to start winning some big football games, perhaps on the ground or in the elements, it helps him stay fresh. So he's another one that stood out to me. I think Hunter Wohler is another one. 7th round pick. I don't know of any 7th round pick that I've covered, and I've only been covering the team for 4 years, so it's a small sample size, but still, I mean, a week or two into training camp, Cody, I think all of us were saying, oh, this dude's a lock to make the team.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's an easy statement to say. Usually with 7th round picks, it's kind of a toss up if you make the team or if you're on a practice squad or something like that. So I think that he has certainly been a big factor, obviously, in that defense. And I like his versatility too. And I think the versatility is going to help him get involved more on defense because Lou's going to do some exotic stuff. Lou Anarumo is not going to be Gus Bradley and kind of sit back in these zone defenses and let teams just kind of pick you apart. It's going to be multiple. It's going to be a kind of a chameleon approach. You're going to make things tough depending on the quarterback and what he likes to do, what he doesn't like to do. And I think Hunter, having played so many snaps in different positions at Wisconsin, doing the same thing basically now at a higher level will help him translate. So those are some of the guys that stood out for me from a rookie standpoint. And so I think this class could be good, even with the Justin Wally injury, because obviously that was devastating. And I do feel for the kid because he seems like a great kid and obviously was excited and was playing well. I mean, that was the only guy Lou Anarumo would say outside of the veterans definitively, oh, this guy's playing very good. So we'll see how the rest shakes out.
Gotcha. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned the DJ Giddens thing because when he was, I think he talked to the media, what was that, on Sunday? Yeah. And I'm like, I have my camera there and I'm like, I cannot hear him. Like, I don't know what he's saying. It's just so quiet.
Oh, and actually, one more quick thing as far as the rookies. How could I forget JT Tuimoloau, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's looked the part. His preseason debut against the Ravens. I mean, he had a stat line that obviously you would think, oh, man, that's like Lawrence Taylor or something like that. Now, I get it. It was against backups and his preseason. But to be that active is a good thing. And also, I think he gives that Colts defensive line, again, Lou Anarumo likes versatility. He can kind of give you that versatility by being able to play inside or outside. And so it kind of reminds me of Dio in the way that he played. And perhaps he can be a little bit more explosive, a little more productive as far as a defensive lineman. But honestly, if he turns into Dio 2.0, that isn't a bad thing. Dio's a very good player, in my opinion. So JT's another one that stood out to me. And I'm excited to see what he can do, again, when everything is just kind of like unleashed, because you know how it is. The defensive guys probably get a little annoyed when they count these passes as completions, where it's like, well, I could have strip sacked this guy and I can't hit him, right. So we'll see how it all shakes out.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, it's interesting you said that. It's just about, it feels like the sheer amount of rookies that are going to probably make the team. I mean, it just seems like
good point.
Different from years past. Even like last year, there was those guys, what was it, Jalen Simpson and some of those guys later on that didn't make the football team. But like you said, like from the 1st round pick to the 7th round pick, there may be 1 or 2 guys that don't make it on the final 53-man. But it seems like this class is definitely a class that could make a big impact here, like immediately on this team.
Absolutely. And I think what supplements that, Cody, is the fact that you're not solely relying on them. Like, I would feel a lot differently, even if Justin Wally was healthy, about the secondary had you not brought in Cam Bynum, had you not brought in Jarius Ward. I'd be thinking, wow, you're putting a lot on the plate of a guy like Hunter Wohler, for example, right. To step up and give you meaningful snaps right away. But having those other veterans on the back end, I think is huge. And you can say that about a couple different places on the roster. So I think a lot of their picks this year when it comes to the rookies, outside of Tyler Warren, who I believe is just tight end 1, the rest of them to me felt like, okay, how can we reinforce another position that we already have, perhaps already sewed up with certain players and certain looks and things like that. So to me, like the defensive line depth was already pretty good, but it can't hurt to have JT Tuimoloau join the fray. Same thing with the back end with Hunter Wohler. Yeah, you have Nick Cross. Yeah, you have Cam Bynum. But what about, having him come in and playing some safety and also playing some linebacker? And so if I had to pick a spot, and perhaps, I think that they should have drafted a linebacker or 2 maybe. But other than that, I do think that these guys will get a ton of opportunities to play. And then just knowing the nature of the sport, someone's going to get banged up. Someone's going to get dinged up. So you'll get your shot to prove yourself. And so I think early on, the returns on a few of those players are promising so far. I know Jalen Travis is another one I haven't talked about too much, the offensive tackle out of Iowa State. And he struggled at times, I think, just with the transition to the NFL. However, I tend to trust guys who go to Tony Sparano Jr. I feel like he's proven himself over the last couple of years of being a developmental and a pretty good offensive line coach. So I wouldn't expect anything less from Jalen Travis having a chance to learn from a guy like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Was curious, kind of, James, as we talked about some of the starting guys that are battling, but who are some maybe the back end guys that you're looking at and you're like, okay, who's going to make this position that you think maybe have stood out as well, that maybe have made strong cases because maybe we came into camp and didn't necessarily know if they were going to make the final 53 man, but if you looked at it today and you're making your cuts tomorrow, like you're like, okay, these guys I think have made a strong case to potentially make that the final cut here.
That's a great question. I think when you look at cornerback and just how depleted they are at cornerback, it's hard to overlook a guy like Alex Johnson. I believe he's a second-year player, had gone undrafted last year. And, I think he's had a couple of standout plays throughout training camp. And I'm not saying, oh, my gosh, he's going to start week one. I wouldn't want that to happen. However, if guys are banged up, if they're not available, is that somebody you would consider trying to make the team or trying to get in on the mix? I think Sam Womack is another guy who went from I might be on the outside looking in. Now, he started 8 games last year, but with Justin Wally coming in, he's out for the year. With Jalen Jones, Juju Brents, with Travis Ward coming in, like you wonder where your pecking order kind of falls for yourself. And I think that he's somebody else who's kind of had some up and down moments throughout camp, but is somebody who can still fight for a roster spot. And then also, I give a lot of credit to a guy like Tyler Goodson, who coming into camp, I'm not sure what I expected his role to be necessarily, but I do think that he's emerged as a potential RB2 behind Jonathan Taylor, now in addition to DJ Giddens and others, but he's been, I think, a very good standout player on special teams. And he was telling us, like, look, I was undrafted, coming out of college a couple years ago, and now I have a chance to just get on the field however I can. I'm going to do whatever I can to do that. And so he stood out to me. And so I do think I wish I had a better understanding or a clear understanding of the health standpoint of some players, because now I'm starting to get to that point, Cody, where I do want to ask Shane Steichen, like, okay, I understand that some of these guys might not be available to start the year, but is IR a possibility? Because I do know, I believe that the way it works now, they have the rule where you can designate 2 players to go on IR and return during the season. And I'm wondering with some of these hamstring issues with Juju Brents and and Jalen Jones, okay, is that a possibility? Am I getting ahead of myself with that? So it's something to keep in mind in regards to like how the roster shakes out for that first 53-man roster, because we know it can fluctuate, it can change, it can shift. But those are a couple of names that come to mind for me. And I'm curious to see again just what else kind of stands out. The last one I'll throw out there, and I might be a little bit biased, I wrote a story about him, but I think Tyler Common, the wide receiver out of Emporia State, number 43, Division II program he came from. I don't know if he makes the roster as a wide receiver, but I do think he's somebody that could be in that conversation if something were to happen to one of the wide receivers in the room. Or he could just be, pegged as a practice squad player just because I think he's kind of flashed throughout training camp. So we'll see how it all shakes out. I do know that whenever I make these predictions, I have a 53-man roster projection to do, I think, in about a week and a half. When I do, Cody, it'll be 100% right until it's not. And then
right.
we'll see from there.
Yeah, exactly. It always seems like it's fluctuating and changing, no doubt.
Dude, it's tough, man. It's tough.
Yeah, it is. It is. I was curious about one position I'm always curious about. We obviously know Tyler Warren, tight end 1, but like what in the world is the pecking order behind him right now?
That's a good question. Honestly, going back to your previous question, I kind of merged the two. Mm-hmm. That's one where, if we're looking at the chopping block, I think Jelani Woods might be on the outside looking in. Because in my mind, if you keep 4 tight ends, obviously I'm keeping Warren. I think I have to keep Mo Ali Cox because of the veteran leadership. And also, I'm like higher on Mo Ali Cox than most because I think that he's been, how do I say this correctly so I don't sound like an idiot? I think that the Colts have asked him to do too much. But if you ask him to do less, he's fine for that lesser role. Like if he's your tight end 2 or tight end 3, that is totally fine. He blocks well. He'll make the occasional catch. He knows where he's supposed to be, and he's a great locker room presence. I'm cool with that. I think that we have kind of been like, why do they keep signing this dude? Because he's not, to me, a tight end 1. He's not that. But if he's your
Right.
backup, that's fine. Like I'm totally cool with that. He can block his butt off, and I do think this is still going to be a run first offense. So if that's the case, you want him around. And then Will Mallory has had a great training camp. I would honestly say he's outside of Warren. He's definitely had the most catches and most impressive catches outside of that tight end room. So he's looking really good. I throw him in the mix, and then for my fourth guy, I might go Drew Ogletree. Physicality, pass catching. He offers me more than what I've seen from Jelani Woods. And I'm happy Jelani is healthy. I certainly think that he can, try to make a late push here in training camp. But if I'm picking tight ends, that's how it will rank out to me. Tyler Warren, number 1. And then Molly Cox, number 2. Will Mallory, number 3. Drew number 4. And I think that's honestly a solid room because Tyler elevates it that much. And if everybody else has to take a diminished role behind him, again, I am fine with that because none of the other guys are tight end ones. Tyler Warren is.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, James, really appreciate your time. I have one more question for you. Looking ahead here to Green Bay, what are some things that you're really hoping to see here and maybe get some clarity on as you move into like week 3 and then start seriously thinking about regular season stuff? Obviously, Final 53, man. Like, what are some things you're hoping to see here and take out of Green Bay come Saturday?
I want to see what the passing game looks like in the joint practice as well as the Saturday preseason game. And from what I understand, Cody, I believe one of our Green Bay Packers reporters here, Matt Schneidman for The Athletic, reported that Mike LaFleur, the Packers head coach, was basically saying like he might not play his starters in the Matt LaFleur. I'm sorry, not Mike LaFleur. Matt LaFleur for Green Bay Packers. He was saying he might not play his starters in the preseason game because he thinks he gets more out of joint practices. So that might be the only time, in my opinion, that this Colts offense gets to go up against a defense that isn't their own for a while. And so to me, that is huge. I have looked at the last couple of days and I'm thinking, wow, A.D. Mitchell's looked really good. Oh, wow. Tyler Warren's looked pretty good. The passing game at times looked pretty good. But then back in my mind, Cody, I'm like, they're playing against guys who won't be starting on Sundays. Right. And so if they can get those reps in the joint practice or on Saturday in the preseason game, that to me will be very invaluable to where your passing game is. Because again, I don't expect the team to be a pass first team, but you do have to be able to pass to win. Unlike last year where it was like, man, they got dicey sometimes where you just needed a couple of throws to go your way and you weren't able to do it. But can you, hold your own against a defense that is not your own and also doesn't obviously care about how good you look or what you're working on. They want to just disrupt everything. So I'm excited about that. Also, in these joint practices, I want to see how disruptive Latu can be. I want to see how these linebackers look in coverage from a defensive standpoint. I know we all kind of looked at last Thursday against the Ravens, and we were like, are the linebackers ever going to tackle anybody in the run game? Like, and I'm not saying take guys to the ground in the joint practice, but how do you fill those run gaps after you had those issues, in the preseason opener? And then lastly, to kind of give you the trifecta, the coverage from punts, kickoffs was terrible in the preseason game. And that certainly has to change and shift. And so, yes, we talk so much about special teams and Spencer Schrader, and obviously kicking is a big part of that, but it's more than just kicking. And when you allow teams to flip the field without having to run a play, that obviously isn't going to help you in the long run. So a lot to look forward to. I know Jordan Love will not be available for the joint practices or preseason game. The reports came out today that he actually had surgery on his left thumb, not his non-throwing hand, because I think he banged his hand off of a helmet in the preseason opener for them. So he should be ready to go for the season, but I was kind of bummed about that, Cody, because I'm like, man, I want to see this defense get tested by their best quarterback. However, as you remember, they did get cooked by Malik Willis last year in Green Bay. So I was like, if Malik Willis, if he's your backup, hey, maybe you can get a little revenge there for what he did to you at Lambeau Field.
That's right. Well, James, really appreciate your time. I know you said you just came out with an article about A.D. Mitchell. Anything else you're working on where people can find you, find your work and all that?
Yeah, I would just say stay tuned. I got some, bigger picture stories coming on Anthony Richardson, Chris Ballard, hopefully, the Irsay daughters, and trying to figure out, what his new ownership kind of looks like. And then obviously, like I said, everyone's favorite 53-man roster projection until it's not. So I'm excited about it, man. And obviously, I'm thankful you allowed me to come on the pod. And Really just excited about the season because I feel like me and you and so many others, when it comes to, culture reporting or content creation, we have like these circular conversations and they're fun. Don't get me wrong. But it's like, I need something new. I need something that's tangible. I need something that counts. And so we're finally getting to that point where, all the what ifs, the speculations are kind of getting put to bed, and it's about what is.
Yeah, I would say it's probably nice after months and months of, like you said, those circle conversations about the same thing almost, it feels like. And then now you're finally getting some answers, which is definitely,
there you go.
Definitely welcome. So appreciate you, James. We'll have to do it again soon.
Yes, sir. Anytime, man. Have a good one.